In the 1860s and 1870s, British merchants, sailors, and railway workers arriving in Buenos Aires brought leather footballs along with their tools and ledgers. The earliest organized matches were played among these immigrant communities, with the Buenos Aires Football Club generally recognized as one of the first formal clubs established in Argentina, founded in 1867. Football began not as an Argentine story, but as a foreign habit planted in Argentine soil. By the 1890s, the game had begun to escape its British enclosure. Schools, particularly those with English-speaking faculty, spread football to Argentine-born students, and clubs with Spanish names started appearing alongside the English ones. The Argentine Football Association, originally founded in 1893, became one of the oldest football governing bodies outside Britain, a sign of how quickly the sport had taken institutional root. The early 20th century saw football transform from a middle-class pastime into a working-class obsession. Neighborhoods in Buenos Aires and Rosario built their identities around local clubs, and the sport became a stage where the children of Italian and Spanish immigrants could claim belonging in a country still defining itself. Football offered social mobility of a symbolic kind, a way to be seen, to matter, to represent somewhere. Argentina's national team made its international debut in the first decade of the 1900s, competing in early South American championships that would evolve into the Copa América. These tournaments hardened a fierce rivalry with Uruguay, a neighboring nation of similar footballing culture, and the two countries traded dominance for decades. Argentine players developed a style built on close control and improvisation, what locals would eventually call the toque, as a conscious counterpoint to the more physical British model. In 1931, Argentine football took a decisive turn when the professional league was officially established, making it one of the first fully professional leagues in South America. Players could now earn wages for what had been an amateur pursuit, and the best talent from the interior of the country and from neighboring nations funneled toward Buenos Aires. Clubs like River Plate and Boca Juniors grew into institutions that transcended sport, carrying the weight of class identity. River associated with upward aspiration, Boca with the port worker and the immigrant. The mid-20th century produced what many historians regard as the golden generation of Argentine club football, particularly the River Plate side of the 1940s, known as La Máquina, a forward line so fluid and coordinated it seemed mechanical in its precision. Yet even as clubs flourished domestically, Argentine football faced a persistent tension. European clubs, offering far higher wages, drew away many of the country's finest players. This drain of talent became a recurring wound in the national football story. The 1978 World Cup, hosted on Argentine soil under a military dictatorship, delivered the country its first world title in circumstances that remain politically contested to this day. The 1986 World Cup in Mexico brought a second title, this time through a tournament inseparable from Diego Maradona. His two goals against England in the quarter-final, one punched in with a hand and one scored after a run past several defenders, entered global memory as football's most debated and celebrated 5 minutes. Maradona became not just a player, but an argument about what Argentine football meant. Brilliance, cunning, defiance. In 2022, Argentina won its third World Cup in Qatar, led by Lionel Messi in what was widely described as the most dramatic final in the tournament's history, decided on penalties after a match that finished level deep into extra time. The victory closed a generational debate about Messi's place in Argentine football mythology and set off celebrations across the country that lasted for days. More than a century and a half after a British sailor first kicked a ball on the Buenos Aires waterfront, Argentina had made football entirely its own.